Hi guys, hope you all doing well. Welcome back to our channel, and in this video I'm going to talk about Microsoft Zero Trust security for applications. Now, when we talk about security for applications, it's basically a typical lifecycle management that you have to do. We do that with user identity or user object. Similarly, you can do that with application itself. Now, the first phase is discovery. Then you can monitor the applications that you have discovered, and then you can make sure that you have the right set of governance actions in place to allow or block access, or to allow or download a specific set of information. Right now, understand this from a security perspective, that when we talk about application, this is the third layer where a user has to reach. Now, what do I mean by this? That when we talk about zero trust for identity, most of the aspects which are related to authentication or authorization or conditional access, they already are in place, right? We are also making sure that the user is coming from a trusted device. But the question comes then, in this case, what should we do with applications? Right now, think about this as a scenario wherein you have to manage two kinds of applications. The first one is managed application, and the other one is unmanaged application. Now, when we talk about the language which you will typically find in any documentation which is more over related to Microsoft Cloud App Security, the native CASB solution which Microsoft has to offer, they have named it as sanctioned or unsanctioned applications. By sanctioned applications, they typically mean the application which you are trusting, that you are aware of, or which are approved, or line of business application that you have internally developed, or some other cloud applications that you are using, right? Now, since you are aware about the applications which are getting used in your enterprise, there could be a safe assumption that you're making sure that the security and compliance standards are in place. And when we talk about the typical application architecture, they must be using secured libraries for authentication. They must support MFA, and SSO is very common. They must have that as well. So think about like this. For those applications for which you are already aware, all you have to do is monitoring, right? But the issue is, what about those applications which are getting accessed by your users on the endpoints which you are not aware of, right? Wherein a user may be intentionally or unintentionally sharing the data that's confidential for your enterprise. How you're going to make sure that you're going to take care of all these applications, which is moreover a shadow IT application, right? Now, this is a very typical concept that I have covered in MCAS as well. So once you finish this, if you have time, or if you have not seen the MCAS video, you can go ahead and check that. Okay. Now think about like this. It's not only about getting the visibility of all the applications or all the activities. Now, what do I mean by this? That the application which your user is accessing on a device, right? It can be a simple application wherein he or she is uploading some information, or it is a typical application which is going to track some kind of user activities, or a typical database itself, right? Now think about like this. If you get the visibility of these applications, which is actually a requirement from a security perspective, then it's moreover falling under the same category of monitoring, making sure you are discovering all the applications which are trusted, managing all the activities, as well as for shadow IT, you have a solution in place that can let you know which applications are getting accessed by your users. But think about like this. Is only monitoring of both the types of application by any chance going to help you to achieve the required security posture? The answer is no. What you have to make sure that you have the appropriate governance actions in place as well, to make sure that only secured applications are required, right? Now let's understand these three different categories, which starts from shadow IT, then monitor, and then governance. Now, when I say that it starts with shadow IT because it's obvious that you must have some security and compliance policies when it comes to the internal applications or the applications which are known to you. Okay, so if I talk about shadow IT discovery, make sure MCAS and Microsoft Defender for Endpoints are connected or the link between these two solutions is established. How to do that is something I've already covered. Now, what this will do in a nutshell. When we talk about on-prem environments, you can manually upload the logs that you have, and then you can get the shadow IT part uncovered when it comes to on-prem environment. But since on your clients, right, Microsoft Defender for Endpoints exists. The client for Microsoft Defender for Endpoint is there on the device, which will send all the telemetry. Right. So in this case, you will uncover the entire shadow IT that's happening in your enterprise, and then you can go ahead and check the risk score of these applications on the MCAS portal itself. Right. When we talk about MCAS portal, I'm referring to this particular section which says discovered apps. Now, for all those applications which have very risk score low or very low risk score, right, to be precise, you can go ahead and have policies in place and get them blocked. Right. Now, let's talk about the monitor section itself. Now, the first point of the monitor section itself says that you should do the analysis of risk score. And based on your analysis, you should have policies wherein you should go ahead and block the applications which are not required. But there is one more thing, which is the access point that I have mentioned over here, and which is very important. Now think about like this. We develop so many applications. There are so many internal teams who request access to Azure AD, or they want to protect any API through Azure AD itself. Typical example could be Microsoft Graph API, right? But at times what happens that they request a consent which they don't even need. So I'll give you an example. Let's say there is an application for which only the contact access is required. Now, what will happen in this case if that application has the capability to go ahead and read emails? That doesn't make sense, right? So what you have to make sure that apart from catering the request in terms of security that is getting emerged from shadow IT, you also have to make sure that you have the best security practices for your applications, for your own applications, right? Now, this kind of information is available on MCAS portal, but to be very precise, you can just go to security.microsoft.com itself, and the home page will show you all the privileged OAuth applications which might have an access which is not even required. Okay, so now let's talk about the third section of governance itself. So when we say governance, what we have to make sure that all the unsanctioned applications are getting blocked in the internal network as well as at the endpoint itself. Now, if you have integrated Windows Defender for Endpoints or Microsoft Defender for Endpoints, I'm sorry, with Microsoft Cloud App Security, this is something which will happen by default, right? Now, what you also have to make sure that all the current applications which can be connected to MCAS, they are sending all the telemetries so that you can have one correlated view. Last but not the least, make sure that you have right conditional access app control in place so that you're actually going to monitor the entire session, the activity which the user is doing, and whether the required amount of data or whether the right set of data is allowed to be downloaded on an untrusted device or not. Last but not the least, the DLP part. Now, this is something which has been introduced recently, and I'm not sure whether I have covered this in any of my video or not. But when we talk about DLP, there is a very good feature and which is moreover available to Compliance Center itself. Now, what does this typically has is all the DLP policies that you are creating, right? You might have noticed multiple locations, right? Now, when I say locations, I mean Exchange or SharePoint or OneDrive, right? But now if you go ahead and try to create a new policy, there is a specific option which has been introduced, and that is for typically MCAS. So I'll click on next and I'll quickly show you that. Just give me a minute. Let me select any here. Next. Just give me a minute. Okay, so it's done now. I'll click on next. You see this option which says Microsoft Cloud App Security. Now, this is something which has been released recently. What it does make sure that the DLP capabilities that you are trying to implement for Office 365, they can be expanded to a cross-platform solutions as well. Now, this is the use case for this. How to implement it end to end is something that I will be covering very soon, and it will be there with the entire compliance playlist itself. But just for this particular video, to make sure that we know the new features and capabilities which exist, I just wanted to show this. Okay, now let's talk about a quick summary of what all we have discussed in this video. We have discussed about all the best practices that can be done to make sure that all the applications are protected, and how exactly Microsoft Zero Trust for applications work in a nutshell. In the next video, I'm going to talk about Microsoft Zero Trust for data. Now, if you think that this channel is helping you to learn anything new, please feel free to subscribe. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time. Bye bye.